The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under the sodium lamps like veins of forgotten promises. And Simon Harlan stood frozen in the downpour, his wedding ring glinting mockingly as the divorce papers crumpled in his fist. "You're choosing him over us," his ex-wife's voice echoed in his mind, sharp as the chill wind slicing through his coat. Her words a blade aimed at the heart of everything he held dear, their 7-year-old daughter, Lily. But it was not just the custody battle that cracked him open that night. It was the realization that his father's silence, that impenetrable wall of stoic love, might finally shatter under the weight of truths long buried. Edward Harlan had built his life on secrets, a fortress of flannel shirts and early morning fishing trips in the misty Cascades, where words like love were whispered only to the evergreens. Simon had always known there was something unspoken in those quiet evenings by the wood stove. The way his father's gaze lingered a beat too long on the old black-and-white photos of a college roommate tucked in a drawer. Now, as the courtroom loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, Simon wondered if that silence would save them or drown them both. Simon wiped the rain from his face with the back of his hand, the droplets mixing with the salt of unshed tears as he trudged up the cracked sidewalk to the modest craftsman bungalow he still called home. Seattle's perpetual drizzle had always felt like a veil, hiding the city's jagged edges. But tonight it pressed against his skin like judgment. The house lights glowed warm through the fogged windows, a beacon that promised temporary refuge. Yet he hesitated at the porch steps, the divorce summons burning a hole in his pocket. Lily's future hung in the balance, and Rebecca's lawyers were circling like crows, armed with whispers of his lifestyle choices that could sway a judge's gavel toward her alone. Inside, the air smelled of fresh brewed coffee and the faint tang of pipe tobacco, remnants of Edward's evening ritual. His father sat in the worn leather armchair by the fireplace, a dog-eared copy of Walden open on his lap, though Simon knew he hadn't turned a page in hours. Edward's face, lined with the quiet etchings of 52 years, lifted slowly, those steel-gray eyes assessing his son with the precision of a man who had spent decades measuring silences. "You look like hell, kid," Edward said, his voice gravelly from years of courtroom arguments and late-night confessions to no one. He set the book aside, gesturing to the empty mug on the side table. "Sit. Tell me what that witch's attorney said this time." Simon collapsed onto the couch, the springs groaning under his weight, and pulled the soaked papers from his coat. "They want full custody. Dad. Say I'm unstable. That might. Orientation makes me a risk to Lily." The word orientation tasted bitter, like aspirin dissolving on his tongue. He had come out to his parents 5 years ago, in this very room, the fire crackling like applause for his courage. His mother, gone 3 years now from the cancer that stole her laughter, had hugged him tight, whispering that love was love. Edward had nodded, clapped him on the shoulder, and said nothing more. That silence had been a balm then, but now it festered. Edward leaned forward, elbows on knees, studying the documents without touching them. Bullshit. Washington's got laws against that discrimination crap. We'll fight it. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching like a fault line ready to shift. Simon watched him, searching for cracks in the facade. The man who had raised him alone after the divorce from his mother, who coached Little League with a whistle around his neck and volunteered at the local food bank every Sunday, the pillar of their Capitol Hill neighborhood. Edward Harlan, The straight arrow high school history teacher who quoted Lincoln at dinner and fixed neighbors' leaky roofs without asking for a dime. No one would guess the shadows he carried. But Simon had glimpsed them. Late nights when Edward thought he was asleep. The creak of floorboards as he paced the hallway, staring at faded Polaroids from the 70s. A young man with sun-kissed hair and a mischievous grin, arms slung around Edward's shoulders at some frat party in Eugene. Uncle Theo, Edward had called him once, voice thick, before changing the subject. Simon never pressed. Some doors stayed shut for a reason. The next morning dawned gray and sodden, the kind of Seattle autumn that seeped into your bones. Simon dropped Lily at school, her small hand sticky in his, her backpack bouncing with the weight of crayons and dreams. "Daddy, will Mommy let me keep the fairy wings?" she asked, eyes wide as saucers, oblivious to the war brewing. He knelt, smoothing her curls, and promised yes, even as guilt twisted like a knife. Rebecca had been his college sweetheart, the girl who laughed at his bad puns and dreamed of a picket fence in the suburbs. But the fence had crumbled when he admitted the truth, that his heart pulled toward men, toward stolen glances in coffee shops and the electric brush of a stranger's hand. By midday, Simon was at the community college where he taught graphic design, the classroom a sanctuary of humming monitors and the sharp scent of fresh ink. His students, a mix of baristas chasing night degrees and tech hopefuls from Bellevue, filed in chattering about the latest indie band or the Mariners' slim playoff chances. He forced a smile, launching into a lecture on digital composition, but his mind wandered to the custody hearing in 2 weeks. The judge, a stern woman named Hargrove with a reputation for favoring traditional families, would devour every detail. That afternoon, as the bell rang and students trickled out, a knock echoed at the door. Not a student, a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair cropped close and a suit that screamed corporate but hung loose like he'd lost weight in it. "Mr. Harlan, I'm Lucas Reed, from Reed and Associates. Your father's attorney friend referred me." His handshake was firm, eyes a deep brown that held steady, appraising without pity. Simon blinked, caught off guard. "Dad sent you?" He didn't mention. "Edward's not one for chit-chat," Lucas said, a faint smile cracking his stoic facade. "But he called me last night, said you need someone who knows family law inside out. Pro bono. If it comes to that." He pulled out a leather portfolio, flipping it open to notes scribbled in precise script. "Walk me through it. Every ugly detail." They talked for hours in the emptying classroom, the rain pattering against the windows like impatient fingers. Lucas listened without interruption, his questions probing gently, drawing out the timeline, the marriage's slow unraveling, the therapy sessions where Simon's confession hung in the air like smoke, Rebecca's tears turning to accusations. "She says I'm selfish. That Lily needs a normal home," Simon finished, voice raw. Lucas nodded, jotting something down, and for the first time, Simon felt seen, not as a villain in his own story, but as a father fighting for his light. As Lucas packed up, he paused at the door. "Your dad's a good man, Simon. Stubborn as hell, but good. Whatever happens in that courtroom, you got allies." His gaze lingered a second too long. A spark of something unspoken, curiosity, maybe, or the quiet recognition of shared battles. Simon's pulse quickened, but he pushed it down. Romance was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with Lily's world teetering. Evening brought Edward home from parent-teacher conferences, his satchel slung over one shoulder, tie loosened. They ate meatloaf in silence at first, the clink of forks the only sound, until Simon couldn't hold it in. "Thanks for calling, Lucas." "He's sharp," Edward grunted, pushing peas around his plate. "Knew him from law school. Owes me a favor or 10. He met Simon's eyes then, something fierce flickering there. "You don't deserve this crap. Lily's your blood." End of story. Simon reached across the table, squeezing his father's forearm, the skin rough from years of manual labor disguised as hobbies. "I know, Dad. But what if the judge buys her story? What if they paint me as the villain?" Edward's grip tightened on his fork, knuckles widening. "Then we remind them what family means." His voice dropped, almost a whisper. "I've got your back, son. Always have." That night, Simon lay awake in his childhood bed, the walls papered with faded posters of Nirvana and the Space Needle, listening to the house settle. Down the hall, Edward's door creaked open, then shut softly. In the quiet, Simon wondered about the man in the photos, the one with the easy smile. What stories lay buried there, waiting for rain to unearth them? Little did he know, the storm was just beginning. The week blurred into a haze of depositions and whispered phone calls. Lucas proved relentless, digging into precedents that chipped away at Rebecca's narrative. They met in his office overlooking Elliott Bay, the ferries cutting white wakes through the choppy water, a reminder of paths diverging. Lucas shared bits of himself over stale donuts, divorced himself. No kids. A golden retriever named Max who chewed shoes like therapy. "It's not easy being the other in a world that still whispers," he said one afternoon, his knee brushing Simon's under the conference table. The touch lingered. Electric, but Simon pulled back, eyes on his notes. Guilt gnawed at him. Lily's bedtime stories now carried an edge. Her questions about why Mommy was mad sharpening like tiny daggers. "Do you love someone else, Daddy?" she asked one night, tucked under quilts printed with stars. Simon's throat closed. "I love you, Bug." That's enough, but it wasn't. Not when dreams of strong arms and stubble-rough kisses haunted his sleep. Edward, sensing the strain, suggested a drive to the mountains. They loaded the truck with fishing rods and thermoses, Lily giggling in the back as they wound up I-90 towards Snoqualmie Pass. The evergreens towered like sentinels, their needles whispering secrets to the wind. At the lake, Edward cast his line with practiced ease, the water rippling like silk. "Remember when you were knee-high? Fell in chasing that frog," he said, chuckling. Simon smiled, baiting his hook, the rhythm familiar as breathing. As the sun dipped, painting the sky in bruised purples, Lily dozed against Simon's side. Edward stared out at the horizon, his profile etched in gold. "Your ma. She knew things about me. Things I never said." His voice was low, the words pulled from deep. Simon's heart stuttered. "What things?" Edward reeled in his line slowly. "Empty. Just. Love's complicated. Son. Sometimes you hide it to keep the world from breaking." He turned then, eyes shadowed. "But for you and that girl of yours, I'd burn it all down." The words hung heavy, a promise laced with pain. Simon wanted to press, to crack the vault open, but the moment slipped away like the fish that got away. Back home, the custody battle loomed larger. Rebecca's emails growing venomous, laced with barbs about protecting Lily from confusion. Simon's resolve hardened, but doubt crept in like fog off the sound. By week's end, Lucas called with news, a witness from Rebecca's side. A nosy neighbor claiming to have seen Simon with questionable company. The implication stung, his brief coffee date with a colleague from the college. Innocent as rain. They're building a case on shadows, Lucas growled over the phone. We need to humanize you. Show the judge the father, not the label, Simon agreed. But as he hung up, the weight settled deeper. That night, over whiskey by the fire, he told Edward everything. His father's face darkened, fist clenching. They come for you. They come through me. It was the closest he'd come to rage. A thunder rumble in the distance. As the hearing approached, Seattle streets felt narrower, the coffee shops buzzing with oblivious life. Simon walked them alone, collar up against the chill, replaying Edward's words. Love's complicated. He thought of Lucas's steady gaze, the way his laugh lines crinkled when he teased about Simon's terrible taste in ties. Temptation whispered, but fear shouted louder. Lily first. Always Lily. Yet in the quiet hours, Simon dreamed of bridges, not the ones spanning Puget Sound, but the ones between hearts, fragile and fog-shrouded. The courtroom waited, a coliseum for truths unspoken, and in its shadow, a father's silence began to fracture. The alarm clock buzzed like a hornet at dawn, yanking Simon from a dream where Lily laughed in a sunlit park, her hand in his. No papers or gavels to steal the joy. He silenced it quickly, not wanting to wake her in the next room. The house was still, save for the distant hum of the coffee maker timer Edward had set the night before, a small ritual of care in the chaos. Simon padded to the kitchen in socks, the linoleum cold underfoot, and poured a mug, the steam curling like ghosts of conversations yet to come. Edward appeared moments later, hair tousled, flannel robe belted loose over pajamas. Big day, he said simply, grabbing his own cup. No need for elaboration. The pre-hearing meeting with Lucas loomed at 9. A strategy session to armor them against Rebecca's onslaught. Simon nodded, sipping the bitter brew, his stomach twisting. Yeah. Feels like walking into a lion's den wearing stay cologne. Edward chuckled, a low rumble, clapping Simon's shoulder. Lions eat steak. You're the one who tames them. It was his way, blunt affirmations wrapped in folksy wisdom. A legacy from Oregon logging camps where his own father had swung an axe against giants. They ate toast in companionable quiet. Lily's crayon drawings taped to the fridge, a colorful barricade against the gray outside. Dropping her at school was a ritual now laced with urgency. She hugged him fierce at the gate, her backpack slung low. Knocking dead. Daddy. Like in your stories, Simon's chest ached. He spun tales of knights and dragons at bedtime, casting her as the fearless queen. Today, he was the knight, blade drawn against invisible foes. Lucas's office was a sleek loft in Pioneer Square. Exposed brick walls lined with law tomes and abstract prints of crashing waves. The man himself waited at a glass conference table, sleeves rolled up, a stack of files like battle plans. Morning, team, he greeted, standing to shake hands. His touch lingered on Simon's, warm and deliberate, sending a forbidden shiver up his arm. Edward, ever the observer, raised an eyebrow but said nothing, settling into a chair with his satchel at his feet. They dove in. Lucas spread depositions across the table, highlighting Rebecca's claims, Simon's absentee parenting during late-night grading sessions, the influence of his community on Lily's development. The neighbor's affidavit was there too, worded to imply debauchery from a single coffee run. It's character assassination, Lucas said, voice edged with steel. We counter with character witnesses. You, Edward. Colleagues from the college. Hell, even a barista at that cafe swears you're a saint. Edward leaned back, arms crossed. I'll testify. Whatever it takes. His tone brooked no argument. But Simon caught the flicker in his eyes, dread, perhaps, or the ghost of old wounds. Simon spoke up, voice steadier than he felt. What about me? How do I show her I'm enough? Lucas's gaze softened, meeting his across the papers. By being you. Honest. The judge wants to see the man who builds fairy wings from cardboard and stays up gluing them at midnight. Not the caricature they're selling. The meeting stretched into lunch. Takeout, faux steaming in styrofoam bowls. Chopsticks clacking like Morse code. Conversation veered personal under the guise of rapport building. Lucas shared a story from his undergrad days at UW, coming out in a dorm room reeking of ramen and rebellion. The fallout that cost him a scholarship. Family cut me off for a year. Thought it'd break me. Didn't. Edward listened intently, stirring his broth, his silence heavier than words. As they wrapped up, Lucas pulled Simon aside by the elevator. You're holding up, but don't bottle it. After this, coffee? No notes. Just talk. His smile was tentative, boyish against the lines of experience. Simon's heart tripped, the pull magnetic. I'd like that, he murmured, the words a small rebellion against fear. Back home. The afternoon blurred into preparations. Edward mowed the lawn with methodical strokes, the mower's drone a meditation, while Simon reviewed his statement, words blurring on the page. Lily bounded in from after-school care, cheeks flushed, chattering about a finger-painting project of rainbow families. The innocence pierced him. He scooped her up, burying his face in her hair that smelled of crayons and apple juice. That's my girl. Colors for everyone. Dinner was spaghetti, sauce simmering with basil from the windowsill pot, a recipe from his mother. They ate on the back porch, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, Lily twirling noodles on her fork. Edward told stories of his teaching days, the kid who smuggled a frog into algebra, the prom where he chaperoned and ended up dancing with the gym teacher to Elvis. Laughter flowed easy, a brief oasis. But as Lily yawned and headed to bed, the mood shifted. Simon and Edward lingered over dishes, suds bubbling in the sink. Lucas seemed solid. Edward ventured, drying a plate with deliberate care. Simon paused, sponge in hand. He is. More than that. Maybe. The admission hung. Vulnerable. Edward nodded slowly, setting the plate aside. Good. You deserve more than battles. Son, then, quieter, I never gave you that example. With your ma. It was what it was. Simon turned, water dripping from his fingers. You were enough. Dad. You still are. but the words felt incomplete. A bridge half-built. Edward's eyes drifted to the window, where rain traced rivulets down the glass. Some bridges you blow up yourself. To save what's on the other side, sleep evaded Simon that night. His mind replaying the day's fragments, Lucas's touch, Edward's veiled confessions, Lily's trusting gaze. He rose at midnight, padding to the living room where Edward sat with a tumbler of scotch, the fire low. "Can't sleep either?" Simon asked, sinking beside him. Edward swirled the amber liquid. "Ghosts. They get louder in the dark." He hesitated, then pulled a photo from his wallet, a creased snapshot of two young men on a beach. Arms linked, waves crashing behind. "Theo. We met at Oregon State. History majors. Thick as thieves. More than that. For a summer." The words tumbled out, halting at first, then steady. "It took him in '89. I buried it all after. For you." For her. Simon's breath caught. The revelation, a key turning in a long-locked door. He reached for his father's hand, rough and steady. "You didn't have to." Not alone. Edward's eyes glistened, the firelight dancing in them. "I did. But seeing you fight makes me think maybe it's time to stop." The moment bonded them, father and son in the hush of midnight truths. Dawn brought no ease, but a quiet resolve. The hearing was tomorrow, and with it, the unraveling of threads long woven tight. Rebecca's camp struck first, her attorney filing a motion that afternoon to bar irrelevant personal testimonies, code for silencing Edward. Lucas fired back via email. "CC&G Simon, not a chance. We're bringing the full Harlan package." Simon forwarded it to Edward, who replied with a single thumbs-up emoji, the man's concession to modernity. Evening brought unexpected warmth. Lucas texted, "Rain's letting up. Walk." Simon glanced at Edward, who was reading to Lily in her room, his voice a gentle baritone weaving tales of pirate ships. "Go," Edward mouthed when he emerged, waving him off. Life's not all gavels. They met at Gasworks Park. The old gasification plant's skeletal towers silhouetted against the sunset, a relic of industrial ghosts. The paths wound grassy and damp, city skyline jagged in the distance. Lucas walked with hands in pockets, shoulders relaxed. "Needed this. Cases like yours, they stick." Simon nodded, kicking a pebble. "Sticks to me too." Like tar, they talked then. Unfiltered, Lucas's ex. A financier who fled when the closet door creaked. Simon's college flings. Fumbling explorations in Seattle's underbelly clubs. Laughter bubbled up. Surprising. As Lucas mimicked his dog's enthusiastic greetings. At the water's edge, their shoulders brushed, and neither pulled away. "You're stronger than you know," Lucas said softly, his breath warm against the cooling air. The kiss happened naturally, a tentative press of lips under the rusting arches, tasting of salt and possibility. Simon's heart soared, then plummeted. Lily, the hearing, the fragility. He stepped back, breathless. It's complicated." Lucas cupped his jaw, thumb tracing the scar. "So is everything worth it?" They parted with a promise of tomorrow. But Simon's steps home were heavy, joy tangled with dread. Edward waited up, nursing tea. "Good walk." Simon flushed, nodding. Edward smiled faintly. "About time you smiled like that." No judgment, just pride. In that moment, Simon saw his father not as a monolith, but a man scarred, resilient, loving in silences now breaking. Night fell, the house wrapping them in its familiar creaks. Simon lay awake. Lucas's kiss a brand, Edward's story a anchor. Tomorrow, the courtroom would test them all, truths clashing like thunder over the sound. The King County Courthouse squatted on 3rd Avenue like a concrete behemoth, its steps slick with morning mist, flags snapping in the brisk wind off the bay. Simon arrived early. Suit crisp but tie askew. Lucas at his side with a briefcase swinging like a pendulum. Edward followed in his old Ford pickup, parking curbside and joining them with a nod that spoke volumes. Ready, resolute. Lily was with a sitter, a trusted neighbor who baked cookies shaped like stars, her texts already pinging reassurances. Inside, the air hummed with the low buzz of lives in limbo, couples murmuring over plea deals, clerks shuffling files like cards in a rigged game. They checked in at the family court desk, the clerk's voice monotone as she called their case number. Harlan versus Harlan. Courtroom 4B. Simon's stomach lurched. It was his name against itself. A civil war etched in legalese. Lucas led them to a bench in the hallway, reviewing last-minute notes. Stick to the script. Short answers. Let me object if she pushes. His hand found Simon's knee under the table. A squeeze of solidarity. Edward sat ramrod straight, scanning the room like a sentinel, his eyes catching on Rebecca across the way. She looked polished, hair in a severe bun, flanked by her attorney, a slick woman named Vargas with pearls and a predator's smile. Their gazes met briefly. Hers was ice, his a plea unspoken. She turned away first. The bailiff called them in, and the courtroom swallowed them whole, polished wood panels. The judge's bench elevated like a throne. American flag drooping slightly in the still air. Judge Hargrove entered, robes swishing, her face a mask of impartial granite, mid-50s, silver-streaked hair pinned back, glasses perched on a nose that had snorted at countless lies. Be seated. We're here on the matter of temporary custody for Lily Harlan, pending full evaluation. Vargas opened, her voice honey over venom. Your Honor, my client seeks primary placement due to Mr. Harlan's recent life changes, which introduce instability. Evidence suggests his personal relationships pose risks to the child's emotional well-being. She gestured to the neighbor's affidavit. Projected on a screen, grainy photo of Simon at the cafe, arm around his colleague in casual camaraderie. Gasps rippled from the gallery, mostly Rebecca's relatives, a cluster of aunts and cousins from Tacoma. Simon's cheeks burned, fists clenched under the table. Lucas rose smoothly. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. My client's private life is protected under state law, and this evidence is a witch hunt. Hargrove's gavel tapped lightly. Sustained. Stick to parenting. Counsel, but the damage lingered. The photo a specter on the wall. Simon took the stand next, sworn in with a hand on the Bible he hadn't touched since his mother's funeral. Hargrove leaned forward. Mr. Harlan, describe your daily routine with Lily. He spoke steadily, voice gaining strength. Mornings of pancakes and braids. Evenings of homework and hugs. Weekends at the aquarium where she pressed her nose to glass, naming sharks like old friends. She's my world, Your Honor. Every choice I make is for her smile. Tears pricked, but he held them, thinking of Lucas's words, "Be you." Vargas cross-examined, probing like a scalpel, late nights at work. The cafe incident, whispers of bar visits. Isn't it true, Mr. Harlan, that your lifestyle choices prioritize adult pursuits over parental duties? The word lifestyle landed like a slap, reducing his love to a footnote. No, Simon shot back, meeting her eyes. My love for Lily is my duty. It's unwavering, the gallery murmured. A ripple of support from the back. Edward's doing? Perhaps. Calling in favors from the neighborhood. Rebecca testified after lunch. The room thick with sandwich breath and tension. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, voice quavering. Simon was a good husband once. But now, the men, the uncertainty. Lily asked questions she shouldn't. I want stability for her. Her attorney nodded sympathetically. But Simon saw the calculation. The performance honed in mirror rehearsals. As she stepped down, their eyes locked again, hers pleading, his heart broken. They had shared a life, after all, built on compromises that cracked under truth. I'm sorry, she mouthed. Or maybe he imagined it. Edward's turn came late, the clock ticking toward adjournment. Lucas prepped him in the hall. Keep it simple. Heart, not heat. Edward nodded, but his jaw was set, a storm brewing behind calm eyes. On the stand, he faced Hargrove with the ease of a man who'd lectured on Gettysburg 1,000 times. Lily's my granddaughter, Your Honor. Bright as a button, tough as they come. Simon's her rock, fishes with her, builds forts from couch cushions. I've seen him cry over her fevers, laugh at her knock-knock jokes. Ain't no instability there. Just a dad doing right. Vargas approached, circling. Mr. Harlan, you support your sons. Choices. The pause was deliberate. Loaded. Edward's gaze didn't waver. I support my son. Period. Love don't come with footnotes. She pressed, even if it means exposing Lily to objection. Lucas was on his feet, harassing the witness. Sustained, Hargrove said, but Vargas smiled, retreating with a final barb. Family traditions matter, don't they, Mr. Harlan? Stability from the top down. Edward's hands gripped the rail, knuckles pale. Traditions change. Counselor. Blood don't. Court adjourned with no ruling. Hargrove promising a decision in days. In the hallway, Rebecca brushed past, her perfume a ghost of anniversaries. This isn't hate, Simon. It's fear. He nodded, throat tight, watching her go. Outside, the rain had stopped, sky a bruised lavender. Lucas pulled Simon into a hug, brief but fierce. You were brilliant. Edward joined them at the truck, face drawn. Close one. But we held ground. Dinner that night was takeout Thai, spicy enough to burn away the day's residue. Lily regaled them with school tales, oblivious, her laughter a balm. But as bedtime loomed, Edward pulled Simon aside in the kitchen. That question today, it stuck. Vargas knows how to twist. Simon frowned. You're worried about me. Were you? Edward poured scotch. Neat. Both. Secrets have a way of spilling when you least want. He downed it, coughing lightly. Theo. I told you bits. But the rest? It'd paint me the hypocrite in that room tomorrow. You're not, Simon insisted. You raised me to be true. Edward's laugh was bitter. Half true. Maybe. After your ma, I dated women. Good ones. But the pull, it never left. Buried it for the PDA, the tenure track. For you, the confession deepened the chasm. Or bridged it, Simon couldn't tell. Then testify tomorrow like today. Honest, Edward nodded, but doubt shadowed his eyes. Sleep came fitful, dreams of gavels falling like axes. Next morning brought a curveball. Lucas called at 7. Vargas subpoenaed Edward for a full deposition. Wants dirt on the family dynamic. Simon's blood ran cold. Edward, overhearing, set his jaw. Let him dig. Soil's dry here. The deposition room was sterile. Fluorescent hum overhead. A court reporter tapping away. Vargas led. Questions surgical. Edward's marriage. His views on sexuality. Any incidents in his past. He answered clipped. Love my wife. Love my son. That's the dynamic. Then the knife. Have you ever engaged in same-sex relations? Mr. Harlan? Does Lily's exposure start at home? Edward froze. The room contracting. Simon, observing through one-way glass, held his breath. Lucas objected furiously, but Hargrove, via video link, allowed it, deeming it relevant to stability. Edward's voice, when it came, was thunder low. My past is mine. But if it protects my son, he trailed off, eyes on Simon's reflection. The silence stretched. Electric. Court reconvened post-lunch. Tension crackling. Hargrove called Edward back. Clarify your earlier testimony. Mr. Harlan. He stood tall, chest rising. I'll clarify. I'm gay, Your Honor. Always have been. Hid it for decades to teach, to parent, to fit. But my son, he's braver. And Lily deserves both her fathers. Whole. Gasps echoed. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. Simon's world tilted, tears blurring pride, grief, a flood of buried love. Vargas stammered, unprepared. Lucas's eyes shone, a nod of triumph. Hargrove banged her gavel, adjourning for recess. In the hall, Simon enveloped Edward in a hug, sobbing quietly. Why didn't you say, to protect you? Fool. Now it's out. Edward's voice cracked, but his arms held firm. Lucas joined, a hand on each back. You just changed the game. As they stepped into sunlight, the city alive with horns and pedestrians. Simon felt the weight lift, if only a fraction. Truth screamed in court could echo into healing or havoc. The ruling loomed, but for the first time, they faced it unbound. The fallout hit like aftershocks, ripples spreading through the Harlan name faster than Seattle's gossip vines. By evening, Edward's phone buzzed nonstop, colleagues from the high school. Stunned voicemails layered with support or shock. Ed, it's Principal Hayes. We need to talk curriculum. Sensitivity training. Others cut deeper. A terse text from his brother in Spokane. Family meeting. Now, Simon watched his father scroll through them at the kitchen table, face impassive as stone, but his hands trembled slightly on the coffee mug. Lily, bless her, sensed none of it, chattering about a playground adventure while twirling a fork in leftover tie. Grandpa caught a fish that big. She stretched her arms, giggling. Edward mustered a smile, ruffling her hair. Bigger. Kiddo. With teeth like yours. Simon joined in, forcing levity, but his mind raced. How to shield her from the whispers that would surely reach schoolyard ears. Lucas arrived unannounced, bearing grocery bags of ice cream and wine. His tie discarded, shirt untucked in casual defeat. Celebratory survival kit, he announced, setting them down. Edward eyed the Merlot. You read my mind. Counselor. They cracked it open after Lily's bedtime. Glasses clinking in the dim living room. Fire crackling low. To bombshells, Lucas toasted, his foot nudging Simon's under the coffee table. The wine warmed Simon's veins, loosening the knot in his chest. That was epic, Dad. Courtroom legend stuff. Edward snorted, swirling his glass. Epic hangover. More like 40 years of closet. And I pick a Tuesday to air it. But his eyes softened. Meeting Simon's. Worth it, though. For her future, Lucas leaned forward, professional mask slipping. You gave Hargrove the human angle. No judge rules against that authenticity. He paused, glancing between them. But the backlash. We prep for it. Media might sniff around, local blogs. Maybe the PI, the Seattle Times. Simon thought. Dread pooling. Headlines flashing. Local teacher outs self in custody drama. Edward's tenure. His reputation as a steady hand guiding AP history through civil rights modules. Irony's cruel twist. As wine ebbed, conversation turned confessional. Lucas shared his own closet scars, a family Thanksgiving where his father's silence spoke volumes. The reconciliation years later over lukewarm turkey. Healing's messy, he said, hand-finding Simon's in the shadows. Edward watched, a faint smile ghosting his lips, then excused himself to the porch, pipe in hand, leaving him the space. The kiss reignited. Deeper now, Lucas's fingers threading through Simon's hair, pulling him close. It was anchor in the storm, taste of Merlot and mint, bodies aligning like puzzle pieces long separated. Stay, Simon whispered against his neck. Need raw. Lucas did, until dawn's light crept through blinds, their limbs tangled in guest room sheets, breaths sinking in quiet afterglow. Morning brought reality's bite. Edward was up early, frying eggs, the sizzle masking radio news murmuring in the background. Coming out at 52, a father's stand, the anchor intoned, and Simon's fork paused midair. It had hit the airwaves already. Sound bites from the hearing looping. School called, Edward's principal. Voice strained. Administrative leave. Ed. Just till we sort protocols. Edward hung up without a word, plating eggs with mechanical precision. Bureaucracy's a bitch, he muttered, but Simon saw the sag in his shoulders, the weight of doors slamming shut. Simon's college was kinder, a dean's email praising his courageous advocacy, offering counseling resources. But the neighborhood hummed, stares from the barista at Zoka, a hesitant wave from the librarian who checked out Lily's picture books. Whispers followed like shadows. Rebecca called that afternoon, voice small over speakerphone. Lily's laughter faint in the background. Simon. Edward. I didn't know. Tears cracked her words. The lawyers, they pushed the family angle. I never meant. Edward took the phone, tone even. We all pushed. Becca. For Lily. Let's end this clean. She agreed to mediation. Vargas sidelined. A truce in the trenches. Yet betrayal lurked elsewhere. Uncle Ray, Edward's brother, arrived uninvited that evening. Truck rumbling into the drive. Face thunderous under his Stetson. What the hell? Ed, in court, with reporters sniffing, he paced the living room, boots tracking mud, while Simon hovered in the kitchen, listening. Edward stood firm, arms crossed. Had to. Ray. For Simon. For the girl. Ray's laugh was bark without humor. And us? Ma's rolling in her grave. Dad built this family on hard work. Not parades. The slur hung unspoken. But it landed. Edward's face hardened. Ma knew. Supported. You? You're the one hiding behind beer and football. The argument escalated. Voices rising like a Pacific squall. Accusations of abandonment. Of choosing freak shows over kin. Ray stormed out. Door slamming. Leaving silence thick as fog. Edward sank into his chair. Head and hands. Lost him. Maybe more. Simon knelt beside him. Hand on knee. You gained truth. That's not loss. But doubt gnawed. Family fractures ran deep. Veins of prejudice unearthed. Lucas arrived post-brawl, sensing the pall. They walked the block. Streetlights pooling gold on wet pavement. Hands brushing. Betrayal stings, Lucas said. But it's their fear, not your failing. He stopped under a maple, shedding crimson leaves, pulling Simon close. You're building something real here. Us. The us bloomed tentative. A sapling in cracked soil. Back home, Edward had retreated to his study. Sorting old letters, Theo's handwriting looping elegant on yellowed paper. Simon glimpsed one. Miss your laugh. Harlan. Coast's empty without you. Edward folded it away. Eyes distant. He'd be proud. I think. Days blurred into a tense limbo. Hargrove's ruling pending. Media buzzed. Interviews declined. But a local queer mag ran a profile. The Harlan Stand. Father and son against the odds. Support poured in. Emails from former students. A bouquet from the college's LGBTQ club. Lily noticed the shifts. Her small brow furrowing at dinner. Why's everyone sad? Grandpa. Edward scooped her up, settling on the couch with a storybook. Not sad. Bug. Just. Growing. Like you. His voice wobbled. But he read on, pages turning like chapters closing. One night, crisis crested. A brick through the living room window, shattering glass in a spray of shards. A note taped crudely, pervert family. Police came, lights flashing blue-red, but no leads. Simon held Lily as she whimpered. Edward sweeping debris with grim efficiency. Hate's loud, he said later, bandaging a cut on his palm. But we're louder now. Lucas stayed over, his presence a shield. In bed, whispers turned to plans, moving if needed. Therapy for the scars. I love you, Simon said, the words slipping free, raw and right. Lucas's kiss sealed it. Back at you. All in. Edward, overhearing from the hall, paused, a soft smile hidden. His own healing began in fragments, a call to an old friend from Eugene. Tentative coffee invites to the school's Gay Straight Alliance advisor. Cracks let light in. The ruling day dawned crisp. evergreens sharp against a rare blue sky. At court, Hargrove's voice boomed, joint custody, with monitored transitions. Both parents exemplary. Relief crashed like waves, tears flowing free. Rebecca hugged Simon awkwardly, whispering, "For Lily." Edward clasped her hand. Bridge mended in measure. Outside, they breathed as a unit, father, son, daughter, and a man weaving into their tapestry. Betrayal's sting faded against triumph's glow. But Simon knew healing was a horizon, not a destination. The path ahead wound through vulnerabilities bared. Love's claimed. A family reforged in the fire of truths screamed loud. Winter crept into Seattle like an uninvited guest, frosting the sound's edges and turning breaths to visible ghosts. The custody ruling brought a fragile peace. Joint weekends scripted with pickups at neutral parks. Rebecca's smiles thawing from forced to genuine. Lily thrived in the balance, her chatter filling car rides with tales of school plays and friendship dramas, oblivious to the tectonic shifts beneath. Simon clung to that normalcy, but the brick's echo lingered, a reminder that acceptance was patchwork, not seamless. Edward's administrative leave stretched. The high school a minefield of sidelong glances and parent petitions, some demanding his return as a hero, others decrying indoctrination. Principal Hayes called weekly. Updates laced with caution, boards reviewing. Hang tight. Edward filled days with odd jobs, fixing fences for neighbors, volunteering at the food bank where his steady hands sorted cans into neat pyramids. Keeps the mind busy, he'd say. But Simon saw the restlessness. The way his father's eyes drifted to the study drawer holding Theo's letters. Simon's life steadied too. Classes resuming with a buzz of solidarity, students slipping rainbow pins into his hand. The dean greenlighting a guest lecture on design and identity. Lucas wove deeper. Their evenings a rhythm of shared meals and tangled sheets. His apartment in Belltown a harbor of exposed beams and harbor views. Move in, he proposed one rainy Sunday. Over eggs and the Sunday Times crossword. Simon hesitated, heart full but scarred. Lily first. Steps, not leaps. The romance bloomed slow, roots delving into soil enriched by trial. Dates were stolen. Hikes in Discovery Park where ferns carpeted trails like green secrets. Hands linked against the chill, jazz nights at Demetrio's. Saxophones wailing like hearts unburdened. Lucas's touch grounded him, a counterpoint to the emotional tempests, nights when doubts surged, whispering that love like this was borrowed time. Betrayal reared anew from unexpected quarters. Aunt Clara, Edward's sister from Portland, arrived for a visit, her suitcase packed with passive barbs and Bible verses printed on cards. Dinner started civil, roast chicken from the market, wine flowing but curdled over pie. Ed, honey, this phase, it's the devil's whisper. Come home to church with me. Heel proper, Edward's fork stilled, face paling. Phase, Clara, I was born this. Hit it for you. For Ma. For everyone. No more. Lily, half asleep on the couch, stirred at the raised voices. Simon intervened, voice low. Auntie, family's about blood, not books. Clara's eyes welled, but her retort cut. Blood's tainted now. Lily'll suffer. She left at dawn. Check for Christmas undelivered. A chasm widening in the family tree. Edward retreated to the garage, tinkering with an old radio, static crackling like unspoken grief. Simon found him there, sleeves rolled, grease-streaked. She'll come around. Or not. Your call. Edward wiped his brow, radio humming a faint big band tune. Not mine anymore. Yours, Simon. Build better. The wisdom landed heavy. A mantle passed. Crisis deepened mid-December. Snow dusting the Olympics like powdered sugar on a wound. Edward collapsed at the food bank, chest pains sharp as accusations. Breath ragged. Simon raced across town, Lucas driving through slush-slick streets. Heart hammering. ER lights glared sterile. Doctors murmuring stress-induced angina, IVs dripping calm into veins. Not a heart attack, the doc assured, but the warning echoed, slow down. Mr. Harlan. Secrets weigh heavy. In the dim ward, Edward gripped Simon's hand, skin clammy. Didn't mean to scare you, kid. Just. All at once, tears tracked his temples. Theo warned me, bury it. And it buries you. Simon stroked his knuckles. Lucas a silent pillar at the door. Then dig it up. With us, they talked through the night. Edward unspooling decades, the summer with Theo, beaches and stolen nights in dune grass, the diagnosis. Watching vitality ebb from hospital beds, the marriage to Simon's mother. A genuine love shadowed by half-truths. She knew. Forgave my ghosts. You're my redemption. Discharge brought home modifications, a pill box on the counter, walks prescribed like medicine. The neighborhood rallied, casseroles from the librarian, a card signed by the whole block. But internal storms brewed. Simon's dreams turned turbulent, waking sweat-soaked from visions of Lily whisked away, Edward fading like mist. Lucas held him then, whispers of here, now a lifeline. Holiday lights twinkled mocking against the gloom. Storefronts in Capitol Hill draped in garlands that felt like nooses. They decorated subdued, a tree in the corner, ornaments from childhood, Simon's lopsided clay handprint, Lily's glitter star. Edward strung lights with deliberate care, humming White Christmas, voice cracking on Bing Crosby's croon. Rebecca joined for tree trimming, an olive branch extended. Awkward at first, small talk over cocoa. Lily's glee bridging gaps, but thawing as baubles clinked. Edward. I'm sorry, she said quietly, handing him a silver bell engraved with Lily's initial. For the fight. For everything. He nodded, throat working. Me too. Becca. Co-parenting's the real gift. Yet undercurrents swirled. Ray called. Voice slurred from spoken bars. Ruined us. Ed. Ma's legacy gone. Edward hung up mid-rant. Phone trembling. Some bridges burned for good. New Year's Eve brought pivot. Lucas hosted a small gathering at his place. Fireplace aglow. Jazz on vinyl. A handful of friends. His paralegal with a wicked wit. A therapist couple from the Alliance. Edward came. Flannel swapped for a button-down. Mingling with tentative charm. Simon watched him laugh at a story about drag brunches. Genuine. The lines around his eyes easing. Midnight struck. Confetti fluttering like hopeful snow. Lucas pulled Simon to the balcony. City fireworks blooming over the bay. This year, we heal, he murmured, kiss sealing the vow. Below, Edward toasted with strangers turned allies. glass raised to horizons. January thawed the emotional ice. Therapy sessions starting, family counseling at a queer center in the Central District. Circles of chairs where stories spilled like ink. Edward spoke, haltingly at first. Voice gravel over vulnerability, hid so long. Forgot my own face. Simon shared the guilt of his coming out, rippling outward. Lily doodling in the corner with crayons provided. "Daddy's brave," she announced once. Fist-pumping air, dissolving the room in chuckles. Lucas integrated seamlessly, picking up Lily for ice cream runs. His patience a quiet magic. But conflict simmered. A work trip for Lucas to Portland clashed with Simon's art show opening. Logistics straining the new weave. "Go," Simon insisted, masking hurt. "Lily and I have forts to build." Alone that night. Doubt crept. Was love this fragile? Built on custody wins and whispered confessions? Edward sensed it, pulling Simon for a father-son hike in Ravenna Park. Boots crunching leaf litter. Lucas is solid. Like oak. He paused at a bench overlooking the reservoir. Me? I was pine straight, but bendy in her wind. "Don't let my brakes scare you." The words mended a fracture Simon hadn't named. Back home. Lucas returned early. Flowers in hand, daisies, simple and defiant. "Couldn't miss your spotlight." The show was intimate. Canvases of urban abstracts laced with personal symbolism, fractured skylines for hidden truths. Golden threads weaving through for connections reclaimed. Critics murmured approval, but Simon's eyes sought Lucas in the crowd, their gaze a tether. Edward arrived late. Suit jacket over arm. Theo's old watch on his wrist, a talisman. "Proud," he said simply, clapping Simon's back. As winter waned, spring's promise stirred, crocuses pushing through mulch. A metaphor Edward latched onto during group. Life insists. Yet crisis loomed subtle, a school board vote on his reinstatement. Parents divided like Red Sea waves. Petitions clashed online. Hashtags trending local. Harlan hero versus. Protect our kids. The night before the vote, Edward paced the living room, pipe unlit in hand. "If they say no." "What then?" Simon stopped him, hands on shoulders. "Then you teach elsewhere. Truth don't need a podium." Lucas nodded from the couch. Lily asleep against him. "Or write that memoir. Your story's gold." Dawn brought verdict. Narrow yes. With diversity training mandated. Edward exhaled. A weight shed. "Second acts," he quipped, hugging Simon fierce. Healing's path twisted, but they walked it linked, father's screams in court echoing into songs of survival. Son's heart opening to love's full spectrum. Betrayal scarred, but scars map growth. A map to futures brighter than Seattle's fleeting suns. Spring unfurled in Seattle with tentative greens. Cherry blossoms dusting sidewalks like fleeting confetti. But the Harlan home simmered with undercurrents of unfinished business. Edward's reinstatement brought cheers from allies and sullen silences from detractors. His first day back met with a gauntlet of high fives from queer students and averted eyes from the old guard. He navigated it with chin up, chalk in hand, lecturing on Stonewall with a voice that cracked only once on the word liberation. Simon attended the evening open house, Lily tugging his sleeve to show her locker decorated with star stickers. Pride swelling amid the fluorescent buzz. Yet the emotional high tide receded, exposing reefs of unresolved pain. Ray's silence stretched months. Avoid Edward filled with solitary drives to the coast, returning with salt-stiffened hair and vague tales of oyster stands. He'll call when he's ready. Edward insisted over breakfasts of oatmeal and news scrolls. But Simon saw the flinch at every ringtone. Lucas and Simon's rhythm deepened. A dance of domesticity, shared laundry folds. Debates over takeout Thai versus home-cooked stir-fry. Lily's bedtime protests met with tag-team negotiations. But romance's glow dimmed under mundane frictions. A forgotten anniversary dinner. Lucas's late nights poring over case files, leaving Simon staring at ceilings, wondering if passion was prelude or peak. "We're good," Lucas assured during a waterfront stroll, gulls wheeling overhead. But Simon's nod felt obligatory. A crack in the foundation. Crisis ignited on a muggy May evening, air thick with impending storm. Aunt Clara resurfaced, not with apologies, but ultimatums, a letter forwarded from Portland. Pages crisp with judgment, family intervention. Ray's leading. Church Hall. Next Saturday. For Lily's soul, Edward read it aloud at the dinner table. Voice flat. Fort pushing peas like chess pieces. Lily, sensing tension, built a fort from napkins. "Bad guys?" she asked, peeking out. "Worse," Edward muttered. Family. Simon's gut twisted. This was betrayal's sequel. Kin weaponizing faith against flesh. Lucas, scrolling his phone, looked up. "Go." "Shut down clean." "I'll watch Lily." The drive to Spokane was a 6-hour slog through Cascades twists. Edward's truck humming oldies on AM radio, Springsteen growling about Born to Run hearts. Silence punctuated by snippets. Edward's youth in the orchards. Ray's shadow as the favored son. Their father's belt for softness glimpsed in Edward's hidden affections. "Clara's always been the zealot," Edward said. Wipers swiping rain. "But Ray, we were boys together. Fishing the Columbia, dreaming big." Spokane greeted them with flatland sprawl. The church's squat brick building ringed by parking lot puddles. Inside, the hall smelled of coffee urns and potluck casseroles. Folding chairs in a circle like a tribunal. Ray stood at the head, arms crossed over a flannel shirt stretched taut. Face weathered deeper than memory. Clara flanked him, Bible clutched like shield, cousins murmuring in pews. Ray greeted, voice gruff but eyes flickering, hurt, not hate. "Sit." "We pray first." Edward complied, Simon beside, the invocation droning over sins and salvation. Then the barrage, Clara's tearful pleas for reparative prayer, a cousin's anecdote of confused uncles gone astray. Ray's hammer blow. "You screamed it in court." "Fine." "But Lily, dragging her into your mess, that's on you." Edward rose slow, chair scraping linoleum. "My mess, hiding who I am, that was for you." "Ray. Fama's good name. Dad's legacy. But it's done." Simon's raising his girl right. "Love like ours. It's the legacy." Voices overlapped. A cacophony of scripture and sentiment. But Ray stepped forward, face crumpling. "You left us behind, Ed. After Theo, you vanished into that wife. That life. I buried the questions so you could play straight. Now this." The admission cracked the room. Ray's own buried grief. A brother's vigil over secrets. Simon spoke then, voice cutting through. "Uncle Ray, it's not leaving. It's arriving. Dad's here, Whole. Lily needs that strength, Clara sobbed, but cousin nodded. Tentative. The intervention fractured. Not mended. Hugs awkward. Promises vague. Driving back under star-pricked skies. Edward exhaled long. Heard him, at least. That start. Simon squeezed his arm. Healings in the hearing. Home brought Lucas's embrace. Lily's drawings taped anew, a family of stick figures under rainbow arcs. But Simon's crisis crested private. Doubts about Lucas. The fear that love mirrored his parents, genuine but shadowed. One night, post-dinner dishes, he confronted it in their bed. Sheets cool. What if we're just rebounding? Courtroom adrenaline fading. Lucas propped on elbow. Eyes searching. Rebounds fireworks. It's the quiet after, building. Not burning. He traced Simon's scar. Kiss following. I choose you. Every day. Mess and all. The vulnerability bridged. Deepening commitment. June bloomed with milestones. Lily school play. Simon as stage dad with flowers. Edward in the front row whistling. Lucas proposed a family trip, Oregon coast. Theo's beaches. Edward agreed, packing Theo's photo like talisman. The drive echoed their earlier journey. But lighter, Lily's queries about tide pools. Sing-alongs to car radio. At the shore, waves crashed relentless. Sand gritty underfoot. Edward walked alone first. Photo in pocket. Returning with eyes red-rimmed, but clear. Told him about you. About us. Simon hugged him. Salt stung. Evenings by bonfire. Marshmallows toasting golden. Stories flowed. Lucas's boyhood in Tacoma. Fishing with a dad who never quite understood. Simon's college awakenings in dim clubs. Heart racing to pulsing bass. Lily danced in surf. Carefree. Her laughter a hymn. Back in Seattle. Summer's heat wave pressed. Air conditioners humming citywide. Edward dated tentatively, a widower from the Alliance. Coffee turning to walks. Slow, he cautioned Simon over beers on the porch. Like learning to swim after drowning. Simon's art surged. A series inspired by fractures. Canvases of shattered glass, mended with gold. Kintsugi souls. Gallery interest peaked. A show in Pioneer Square looming. Lucas championed it, framing mock-ups on their fridge. Crisis's shadow fell in August. Subtle, a letter from the school board. Anonymous complaints resurfacing. Harlan's bias in history class. Edward's face drained. Pipe forgotten. Thought it buried. Simon rallied. Fight it. With facts, not fear. Public hearing packed the boardroom. Parents on both sides, signs waving educate. Don't indoctrinate versus history is queer. Edward testified. Vocastati, chartros. Stonewall. Suffrage. The closet's cost. That's education. Simon spoke next. Lucas prepping his words. My father's courage models resilience for all kids. Lily included. The board ruled in favor. But the toll lingered, Edward's angina flaring. Nights pacing. Therapy delved deeper. Group shares uncovering layers, the guilt of half-lives. Joy in reclamations. I'm 53, Edward confessed one session. And finally me, fall whispered in. Leaves turning amber warnings. Simon's show opened to acclaim. Critics praising raw, emotional architecture. Lucas beamed from the crowd. Lily in a smock splashed with paint from helping. Edward bought the centerpiece, a fractured skyline gilded, hanging it in the living room like a badge. Betrayal's last gasp came via Ray, a midnight call. Voice whiskey rough. Clara's sick. Cancer. Wants you. Ed. Forgive. Edward flew to Spokane next dawn. Simon driving him to the airport. Hug lingering. Go. Families fluid. Updates trickled. Bedside reconciliations. Clara's apologies whispered over morphine. Ray's hand in Edward's. Bridges mending in extremis. Edward returned changed, lighter. Letters from Theo read aloud to Simon one evening. Voices blending in catharsis. As autumn deepened, the Harlans stood sturdier, Edward dating steady. Simon and Lucas planning rings subtle. Lily's world expanding with two homes woven seamless. Crises forged, not felled, screams in court birthing symphonies of self. A father's protection echoing in son's steps forward. The path healed, scarred beautiful. Autumn's palette painted Seattle in fire and gold. Maple leaves swirling like embers in the wind off Lake Union. But the Harlan household pulsed with a quieter rhythm now, a cadence of routines reclaimed, vulnerabilities honored. Edward's relationship with Martin, the widower from the Alliance, unfolded like a well-worn novel. Saturday farmers markets in Fremont. Hands brushing over heirloom tomatoes. Evenings debating Civil War tactics over scotch. Laughter punctuating pauses. He's steady, Edward confided to Simon during a backyard bonfire. Sparks dancing skyward. Like Theo, but with better knees. The admission carried no weight of comparison. Only gratitude for second blooms. Simon's life with Lucas solidified. Their Belltown apartment a blend of worlds. Simon's abstract prints on white walls. Lucas's law tomes stacked beside dog-eared sci-fi. Max the retriever sprawled on a rug that smelled of wet fur and home. Lily split weeks evenly, her backpack a shuttle of stuffed animals and homework, adapting with a child's elastic grace. 2 houses, double cookies, she quipped once, earning groans and hugs. Rebecca dated too, a kind-eyed engineer from her office. Their co-parenting texts evolving from clipped logistics to shared memes about toddler tantrums. Yet healing's arc bent toward deeper reckonings. Edward's sessions unearthed a manuscript, notes scribbled over years. Fragments of a memoir titled Closeted Chronicles, Lessons from the Front Lines. He read drafts aloud on porch swings. Voice tentative at first, then swelling with reclaimed authority. Publish it, Simon urged. Lucas offering pro bono contract reviews. Your scream in court? That's the hook, Edward demurred. But the seed took root. Queries sent to indie presses specializing in queer histories. Simon's own art evolved. The Kintsugi series expanding into installations. Interactive mirrors cracked and gilded, inviting viewers to trace their scars. A grant from a Seattle Arts Commission funded a community workshop. Teens and elders gathered in a warehouse space, hands gluing shards under his guidance. Beauty in breaks, he told them, echoing Edward's fireside wisdom. Lucas volunteered as photographer, capturing not just the work but the stories whispered, a barista's coming out tattoo, an elder's faded hanky from pre-Stonewall bars. Crisis, when it came, was internal, a slow burn rather than blaze. November rains returned, drumming roofs like impatient fingers, and Edward's checkups revealed shadows, a spot on the lung. Biopsy cautious. Likely nothing, the doc said. but waiting rooms loomed with ghosts of his wife's chemo chairs. The family huddled, Simon canceling classes, Lucas rearranging dockets, Lily drawing superhero lungs with crayons bold. Martin held Edward's hand through the scan, his presence a quiet fortress. Results clear, benign, a false alarm etched as lesson. Life's sneak attacks, Edward joked over recovery pie, but his eyes held new depth, urgency to live unfiltered. He submitted the memoir that week. Rejection slips shrugged off like wet coats. Acceptance came swift from a Portland press. Your voice cuts true. We see you. Winter solstice brought celebration. A potluck at the queer center, tables groaning under tamales and lax. Strings of lights twinkling like urban stars. Ray arrived unexpected. Clara's passing 2 months prior, a softening hammer. She forgave last, he told Edward over eggnog. Voice rough. Said to tell you, love wins. Even late. Hugs followed. Tentative, then tight. The brothers toasting to mended fences. Lily's 8th birthday anchored the season. A party at the zoo, penguins waddling comic. Cake smeared with frosting grins. Rebecca and her partner joined. The circle widening. Edwards, Harlan's. Reed's blending in photos, snapped candid. Family's not blood, Rebecca said to Simon amid balloon chaos. It's choice. He nodded, arm around Lucas. The truth settling bone deep. Spring 2026 dawned with launches. Edward's book reading at Elliott Bay Books. Shelves packed. Faces eager. He stood at the podium, gray hair catching light. Voice steady as he read the courtroom scene. His scream a crescendo on page. Applause thundered. Q&A delving gentle. Regrets? A young man asked. Edward paused, eyes on Simon in the front row. Only the years silent. Now, none. Simon's workshop culminated in a gallery walk. Mirrors reflecting a mosaic of stories. Teens tracing gold lines. Elders nodding recognition. Lucas proposed that night. On bended knee amid shards. Ring simple platinum with an etched scar. Marry me in a mess. Simon's yes blurred with tears. Lily cheering. Edward clapping slow. Martin at his side. Summer wove commitments. Wedding plans small. A beach ceremony on Alki with Puget Sound whispering vows. Ray walked Simon down the aisle of driftwood. Eyes misty. Lily scattered petals. Rebecca snapping photos. To futures protected, Lucas toasted post-kiss. Glasses clinking under sunset. Edward's book climbed local lists. Speaking gigs following. High schools. Pride panels. His presence a beacon for closets cracking. He and Martin traveled light. Road trips to national parks. Hands linked over maps. Theo's spirit a companion in rear views. Years folded forward. Lily blooming into a teen with her father's hazel eyes and mother's curls. Art classes echoing Simon's passion. History debates firing at Edward's table. Betrayals faded to footnotes. Crises to chapters closed. The brick a garden marker now. Flowers planted defiant. One autumn eve. Years on. The family gathered porch side. Fire pit crackling. Stars pricking the dome. Edward, silvered and softened, raised a glass. Never said it quiet. Screamed it loud. For this. Eyes circled, Simon's hand in Lucas's. Lily's laugh bright. Ray's nod from the Adirondack. Martin's arm around shoulders. Simon met his father's gaze. The boy who once chased frogs, now a man rooted deep. Protected us all. Dad. Future's bright. The words carried the weight of journeys, kisses stolen. Truths bared. Loves mended in the forge of screams.